Hey everybody, Mr. Moriarty here. This is the walkthrough video for the Translating Equations and Inequalities Quiz Study Guide. So I'm going to walk through this whole thing, and I am going to read the questions with the directions because I spent a little bit of time kind of putting in some more precise directions so you kind of understand how we're going to go through this quiz, the upcoming tests, and things like that. The further we get into this year, the more specific these directions are. So I am going to point these out so you know what to expect on the quiz for Thursday. Here we go. Solve and graph the solutions to the given inequality. Label 5 points on the number line. Show all work. We haven't had the directions of 5 points on the number line, but if you remember back to when we plot points, I always have you put 1 at the solution and then 2 on either side, and those combined will get you the 5 points. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. Each of these is 7 points, so 3 for the correct solution with work. That means solving everything correctly with the correct work. And then 4 for the correct graph with the labels. And the labels in this, I didn't have a better word, but that's basically going to be, did you use the correct dot, open or closed, and then did you shade in the correct direction? So that's where our points are coming from for 1 or 2. Here we go. By the way, recording at my house, gigantic glare. Going to try to mitigate that a little bit. Here's number 1. We have negative 14 minus 4x is greater than 2. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up and solve it as I would normally. So negative 14 plus 14 on both sides. Those will cancel. Don't forget this is a negative 4x, so I'm going to bring my negative 4x down. Keep the inequality sign as greater than. Okay, there we go. 2 plus 14 is 16. So then I'm just going to divide both sides by negative 4. Now, I am dividing by a negative on both sides. So we discussed in class that anytime you are dividing or multiplying by a negative on both sides, you have to switch the sign. So this, instead of reading greater than, we'll read less than. This left side is x. 16 divided by negative 4 is negative 4, and that is our solution. So we'll come down here to the number line. Make sure that you put your arrows on the number line because these number lines don't end. We'll put our solution in the middle and then kind of set this up to label our number line. So 2 numbers bigger than negative 4, 0 works, 5 works in terms of being bigger, and then smaller, I would go maybe negative 10, negative 15. Those all work. We have a less than sign, so that means we cannot include 0 in our solution, so it'll be an open dot. And then we are going to shade in the direction that makes this inequality true. So is negative 10 less than negative 4, or is 5 less than negative 4? And that would be negative 10. So that means that anything in this direction to the left would satisfy this particular inequality. So that would be all of the points. Number 2, I'm going to start by splitting this up at the inequality sign. I'm going to then subtract 37 on both sides. By the way, I remembered my calculator from school, so I'm going to take negative 5 minus 37 on my calculator. Gets me a negative 42 greater than or equal to 6x. From here, I'm going to divide both sides by 6. Now, notice this 6 is positive, so I'm dividing both sides by a positive 6, even though this is a negative 42. So my sign, my inequality sign, will stay the same as the greater than or equal to sign. So my solution is negative 7 greater than or equal to x. All right. So down here, remember, make sure you have arrows on the end of your number line here. Put your solution in the center, negative 7. This is greater than or equal to, so this will be a solid closed dot. Put a couple numbers larger than -7, smaller than -7. May go 0 and then 5, and then -10 and -15 here. Okay, so this is what we got. Shade in the direction that makes this inequality true. So is 7 greater than or equal to -10, or is 7 greater than or equal to 0 or 5? And it would be 7 is greater than or equal to anything that's smaller than -7. So I'm going to shade in this direction to satisfy this solution. Okay, so there's 1 and 2. Yeah, not too bad. Pretty standard. Next one. So there are some instructions here. This is where your points and the directions are going to be for this particular problem. So it says read the problem. We can do that. Write and solve an equation for the following situation. So it's telling us we have an equation. So there should not be an inequality sign in this problem. And it says interpret the solution using complete sentences, which we should know how to do. There we go. Here's, we got 5 points. So 1 for the correct variable, equation, solution with the work, and then the interpretation. So that's what this one's going to involve. By the way, mine looks a little bit different than yours because I made this on my Chromebook, which doesn't work as well as my desktop. So it's all the same problems, everything like that, but my answer key is going to look a little bit different than what you guys have on paper. In any case, Louisa mows lawns during the summer. She charges $15 if she cuts the grass, but charges $5 more if she also trims the grass. Last week she trimmed 5 more yards than she cut. If she made $415 last week, how many yards did she trim? We need to start by identifying the variable, and I'm looking for like the question, how many, how much. I see I've got how many yards did she trim? So that right there is going to be my variable. You pick whatever you want. It makes sense for me to use y. And I am going to be specific in this because it's not just saying how many yards, did she get after. It said how many yards specifically did she trim. So I'm going to use my variable as y equals yards trimmed. And you'll see why in a second. This problem took me a little bit of time to kind of get through. It is a multi-step equation problem. So there was some trial and error on my end. I knew what the correct answer was because obviously I had the answer key. But this right here tripped me up a little bit because I was just using y as yards, but it does say specifically how many yards did she trim. So in terms of my equation, this is what I have. So I know that I have a total. There's going to be a total that she makes, which you know what that is. It's in the problem. And then essentially this boils down to how many yards did she cut added to how many yards did she trim in addition to cut. So this is a big oversimplification of this, and you'll see that when I actually write the equation, because if that was the case, then you would just have whatever the yards cut is plus the yards trimmed, which would just be y. So here's how I'm going to set this up. The total we know is $415. She made that much. Okay. The yards that she cut, and I'm going to say yards cut and trimmed. That's kind of how I set mine up. Let's look back at the problem. So she charges $15 if she cuts the grass. So just if she cuts the grass, but 5 more if she also trims the grass. So I said, okay, let's take $20 because that would be cut and trimmed, and throw y on there. So y would be our yards trimmed, but it would be $20 for the cost of the yards trimmed and cut. So that's what I have. That's why I have this set up here. Then in addition to that, we're going to take 15 because that would be the charge that or the amount of money that she has for just cutting the grass. And just cutting the grass is going to be $5 less than the cost of her cutting and trimming. So this is how I set up my equation. Let me explain it again, okay? Because again, this in words here, this is an oversimplification. 415 is our total. That's how much she made last week. The $20 comes from the cost of her cutting and trimming, because it says 15 to cut, 5 more to trim. So I just kind of looped that in there as 15 plus 5 to get $20 for the yards trimmed, which still takes into account this variable. So that Y is still the number of yards trimmed. So it's $20 per yards trimmed, plus the yards that she cuts. I guess maybe I set this up, looking at it right now, I guess maybe I set this up a little backwards. The yards trimmed should have been here. That's okay. We move on. So the yards cut is $15. So it's $15 to cut the grass. But we have to also think that cutting the grass is $5 less than trimming the grass. Okay, and we established that cutting and trimming was 20, but if we're just cutting, which is what this 15 comes from, it's up here, then we have to take $5 away from the yards trimmed. Okay? So this is the equation that works for me. With this being multi-step, I would believe that there are probably more than one ways to do this to get the correct solution, but this is what works for me. You'll probably have questions in class. We can address them then. Okay? But this is the equation that I'm going to use to solve and go through the rest of this. All right? So we've got our variable, we've got our equation. We need to go ahead and solve this now. So let me put it over here. I can solve it. First step is to distribute always. So I've got 415 on the left side, 20y on the right side. 15 times y is 15y. And 15 times negative 5 is negative, I believe it's 75. Let me just check. Yeah, minus 75. Okay, which is all right, because now we're kind of thinking abstractly here. All right, this is the equation that's going to work. This is the math that we need to do. So I'm now going to combine like terms, which would be the 20y plus the 15y. 20 plus 15 is 35y minus 75. I'm going to add 75 on both sides. So my 415 plus 75 gets me 490. And that's going to equal 35y. My last step here is to divide both sides by 35. So I take 490 divided by 35, I get 14 equals y. Now, kind of looking back at this, my y is yards trimmed. Y is yards trimmed. Y is 14. So in my interpretation, you just kind of connect the two. Okay? So what's her name? Louisa? No. There we go. Louisa. We're looking for the yards trimmed. How many yards did she trim? Louisa trimmed 14 yards. I guess it's last week. I think that was the context of the problem. So yeah, Louisa trimmed 14 yards last week. All right. That is a tough one. That's a tough one. All right. Moving on. Oh, this is split over my page. This is going to bite. Determine the value of A so the equation has a solution of x equals 3. This is an interesting problem because we haven't seen one of these, but I promise it's not that hard as it looks up front. It tells you all the information that you need up here, okay? So it says, because we've got two variables here, a and x, but it tells you determine the value of a so the equation has a solution of x equals 3. Well, if this is our solution x equals 3, what are we looking for? Well, what we're looking for is the value of a. So really, this is just kind of a strangely set up question asking you to find a when x is given. So what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to take this down here so I can kind of zoom in a little bit. So it's negative 7x minus 2 equals ax minus 14. And I'm also going to bring the solution of x equals 3 over here. So what I'm going to do is substitute this in. Okay, substitute it in for x. So it'll look like this. Still have that glare. That's better. So negative 7 times x is 3 minus 2 equals, we don't know a, but again, x is still 3 minus the 14. Now, something we haven't discussed in class is what happens when this situation happens here, where the variable's in front of the coefficient. And nothing happens here. The variable in front of the coefficient is the same as if we had something like 3a. You would know what to do here. This just looks a little strange. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify all of this, and at the same time I'm going to rearrange this to where it's something that looks a little bit more familiar to us. So negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. Bring down the minus 2. This is really just 3a, 3 times a. This is a times 3. This is 3 times a. It's the same thing, minus 14. Now I'm going to go ahead and solve it, and I guarantee that I'm going to run out of room. Negative 21 minus 2 is negative 23. I didn't draw the line in this, but that's okay. I'm going to add 14 to both sides. Negative 23 plus 14 is negative 9. So I'm going to go up here. Negative 23 plus 14 is negative 9 equals 3a. And then I'm just going to divide both sides by 3 to get negative 3 equals a. And that's what we're looking for, right? The question says the value of a is. We're looking for a. We found it. Do not make this problem harder than it needs to be. I know there are two variables. I know it's a different type of problem. But when it gives you one variable like it did here, just put it in. Just substitute it in, okay? Anytime you have two variables next to each other, that is multiplication. So there we go. Couple more here, if I could find them. There we go. Here's the next one. So it says, read the problem, write and solve an inequality for the following situation. It tells us it's an inequality. There should be no equal signs at all on this. Interpret the solution using complete sentences. So similar question as the one above, except we have an inequality. 7 points for correct variable equation. That should say inequality. I'll fix that. Solution with work and interpretation. 2 for correct claim with correct explanation. So that's actually this part here, this correct claim with explanation. That's after we do all of the work for the inequality. So I'll address that in a second. A group of friends wants to go to the amusement park. They have no more than $155 to spend on parking and admission. Parking is $6.25, and tickets cost $20.50 per person, including tax. What is the maximum number of people who can go to the park? So we are looking for the maximum number of people. Okay. So maximum number of people, that's one thing. I'm just going to put, and it says friends. I think I addressed this as friends. So you can put friends, you could put people, but basically you need to tell me something like that. Since this says maximum number of people, I'll just use that. So we're looking for P equals number of people. Okay, keep it simple. Number of people, number of friends, just so that you you let me know what it really means, okay? So, oh, I need to fix this too. That should be inequality. I'll fix it. Inequality. So we need to make an inequality. With this, because I told you that we're not going to do anything more than a two-step inequality, this is going to be one side of the inequality is going to be a total. One side is going to be what makes up that total. So I am going to start with what makes up that total because I think that's going to help us in actually creating the inequality with numbers. So what does make up the total? The total is 155. Parking makes up some of it, and tickets make up some of it. So I'm going to say parking plus the tickets, or admission. That's another way to put that. I'm going to draw this little circle here for my inequality sign, and that's going to be the total cost. Okay. The parking, it says, is $6.25. It doesn't say how many people there are or whatever. It's just parking is a flat rate of $6.25. To that, we're adding the tickets, which it says is $20.50 per person. Now, we don't know the persons or people, so we're going to use P. So 2050. So 20.50 P. Now, we need to figure out what that inequality sign is. It says what's the maximum number of people. There's another word or phrase in here that's going to help out. And it says they have no more than. Okay. So no more than $155. So what needs to happen is the parking and the tickets need to be smaller than $155. It also says no more than, so it could be 155. So the inequality sign that I'm going to use here is must be less than or equal to the total cost, which is $155. Okay. Whatever they are spending to get into this park has to be smaller than or the same as $155. So that is our inequality that we're going to use. Set it up and solve it. I'm going to subtract 625 on both sides. That's going to be, well, on the left side, we've got 20.50p is less than or equal to 155 minus 625 gets me $148.75. And then I'm going to divide both sides by the $20.50 to get P is less than or equal to 20.50. Ooh, that's gross. So it's going to be 7.25609, on and on and on. Okay. You have to think realistically about what we're talking about. So it's a nasty decimal, but what is the question asking? What's the maximum number of people? Well, the fact that we have a decimal number in terms of people is not great. So what we're saying is the people has to be less than or equal to 7.25609 people. Since we can't really have part of a person here, and I don't want to hear arguments about people missing limbs, we are going to have to, what I would say is round down. So I'm going to round down to say that P has to be less than or equal to 7. Anything past 7.2 is going to be too expensive for this group, friend group. So we know that 7 is going to work because it's smaller than the 7.25 number. So I'm going to use this. P is less than or equal to 7. So for my interpretation, I'm going to say, restate the question, what's the maximum number of people? The maximum number of people is 7. And really, I should have restated that using our inequality words. So something maybe along the lines of, actually, let me write this to the right. Also this, no more than 7 people can go to the, I'm just going to say the park. It's the amusement park. Can go to the park. So that's kind of me using my inequality words. But the maximum works. Maximum number means you can't go more than 7, but anything less than 7 will also work as well. So there's that. Now, going back up to the points. We got the variable, the inequality, the solution with work, and the interpretation, which was right there. Now, 2 for the correct claim with explanation. This is right here, okay? So it says, Little Ricky thinks all 9 friends can go to the amusement park. Explain if Little Ricky's claim is reasonable using complete sentences and correct math vocabulary. So our friend here thinks that all 9 of the friends can go. We just proved that that is not true, okay? So say something along the lines of, and I don't want to eat up too much time here, but something along the lines of Little Ricky is incorrect because, and then I'm just going to kind of restate this. The maximum number of people is, whoops, is 7. Okay, so something along those lines. I know it's really sloppy, but that's okay. We proved, or rather, we disproved him up here with all of our work and our interpretation. So it should fall right in line with the work that we have here. Okay. Last one says, given the equations, find the value of b. You love these problems. Okay. One thing that I want to point out here. A equals, A equals. Okay? Since A is on a side by itself and A equals A, set up your equation such that one of the sides of A is 3 times 2B plus 2, and then the other side of A is the opposite of B, or negative B, minus 15. That's all we need. In this line right here, our A's are gone, so we're just solving for B, which I will edit that. We are looking for B, and this is how we do it. Okay, just solve it like a regular equation. Start with distribution. 3 times 2b is 6b. 3 times 2 is 6. Leave opposite of b, or negative b, minus 15. There's no like terms, so we'll go ahead and try to get our b's on the same side. So I'm going to add b, or 1b. That's what this is, negative 1b. 6 plus 1 is 7b. These are gone, negative 15. I'll subtract 6 on both sides to get 7b equals negative 21. Divide both sides by 7 to get b equals negative 3. So the value of b is negative 3. So there's a few things that I need to edit as I did this, but that's okay. But this is your study guide for the quiz that we will be taking on Thursday, barring something crazy happening. Okay?